Marcus Vega stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the sprawling city of New Geneva stretch out below him. The year was 2387, and humanity had spread across 17 star systems, but the view from the top floor of Vega Industries still took his breath away. Ships glided between the towering spires like metal birds, carrying goods and passengers to distant worlds that his grandfather could never have imagined. At 35, Marcus had inherited the largest shipping empire in known space. Vega Industries controlled the trade routes between Earth and the outer colonies, moving everything from rare minerals to exotic foods across the galaxy. His fleet of quantum-drive cargo vessels was legendary, and his business acumen was spoken of in hushed, respectful tones in corporate boardrooms across human space. But Marcus had rules, strict ones. His personal assistant, Derek, had memorized them all. No executives under 25, no partnerships with companies that couldn't prove 3 years of consistent profit, no investments in unproven technology, and perhaps most importantly, no romantic entanglements with employees, especially not with women who fit certain physical descriptions that Marcus found distracting. Derek had never questioned these guidelines. After all, Marcus Vega's success spoke for itself. The man's discipline and focus had built an empire that employed millions and kept the colonial economy running smoothly. If he needed structure in his personal life to maintain that level of achievement, then structure he would have. The morning started like any other. Marcus reviewed quarterly reports from the Centauri shipping division while sipping his coffee. The numbers were good, better than good actually. The new route through the Kepler system was proving more profitable than projected. Everything was running according to plan. Then Derek knocked on his office door. "Sir, there's been a development with the Titan station situation." Marcus looked up from his holographic displays. Titan Station was a massive trading post orbiting Saturn, one of the most important hubs in the solar system. 3 weeks ago, their management had suffered a catastrophic failure when a rival corporation had poached their entire senior staff. The station was hemorrhaging money and resources, and several companies were circling like vultures, waiting to pick up the pieces at bargain prices. "What kind of development?" Marcus asked. Derek shifted uncomfortably. "A freelance crisis management consultant has submitted a proposal. Her credentials are impressive. MIT doctorate in logistics, former chief operations officer for Stellar Dynamics, and she's successfully turned around 4 major stations in the past decade. The board thinks we should at least hear her out." Marcus frowned. He'd been considering a buyout of Titan Station himself, but only at the right price. Having someone else swoop in and fix their problems would drive up the cost considerably. "Send me her file." "Sir, there's something else. She doesn't exactly fit your usual consultant profile." The holographic display shimmered to life, and Marcus found himself looking at a professional headshot that made him pause. Dr. Zara Williams was a striking woman with rich dark skin, intelligent brown eyes, and a confident smile that suggested she was used to being the smartest person in the room. She was also, undeniably, exactly the type of woman his guidelines specifically warned against. Full-figured, beautiful, and according to her file, brilliant enough to make him forget his own name. Marcus closed the display quickly. "Schedule a meeting with someone else from her team. I'm sure she has associates who can present the proposal." "Sir, she doesn't have a team. She works alone, and the Titan Station board specifically requested to meet with you personally. They've heard about your particular standards when it comes to business partnerships. They want to see how you handle this one." There was something in Derek's tone that made Marcus look up sharply. His assistant was trying very hard not to smile. "What aren't you telling me, Derek?" "Well, sir, word has gotten around the corporate community about your hiring practices. Some people think you're being unnecessarily restrictive. Dr. Williams apparently heard about your guidelines and specifically requested this meeting as what she calls a professional challenge." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He'd worked hard to build his reputation as a serious businessman, someone who didn't let personal feelings interfere with corporate decisions. The idea that people were questioning his professionalism was irritating, to say the least. "Fine, schedule the meeting, but make it brief. 30 minutes maximum." Derek nodded and turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Sir, I've seen her work. The Meridian Station turnaround last year? That was her. She took a facility that was 3 weeks from bankruptcy and had them profitable again within 6 months. Whatever your personal guidelines say, her professional record is flawless." After Derek left, Marcus found himself staring at the door for a long moment. He'd built his career on discipline and control. Every major decision was calculated, measured, and planned. His personal guidelines weren't arbitrary rules. They were carefully constructed barriers designed to keep him focused on what mattered, building and maintaining the most successful shipping empire in human space. But as he returned to his quarterly reports, Marcus found his concentration wavering. He kept thinking about Dr. Williams' file, about the challenge in her smile, and about the fact that she'd specifically requested to meet with him despite knowing about his supposed biases. 3 hours later, his secretary announced that Dr. Williams had arrived. Marcus straightened his tie and activated his professional mask. The calm, controlled expression that had served him well in countless negotiations. He would conduct this meeting with perfect courtesy, listen to her proposal, and then politely decline. His guidelines existed for good reasons, and he wasn't about to abandon them now. Dr. Zara Williams walked into his office like she owned the building. She wore a perfectly tailored business suit that somehow managed to be both professional and stunning. Her posture radiated confidence, and when she extended her hand for a handshake, her grip was firm and assured. Most importantly, her eyes held an intelligence that made Marcus suddenly feel like he was the one being evaluated. "Mr. Vega," she said, her voice warm but businesslike. "Thank you for making time to see me. I know your schedule is demanding." "Dr. Williams," Marcus gestured toward the conference table. "Please, have a seat. I understand you have a proposal regarding Titan Station." She settled into her chair with practiced grace and activated a small holographic projector. "I do, but first I want to address something that I'm sure is on your mind." The hologram flickered to life, showing a detailed breakdown of her previous assignments. "I know about your hiring guidelines, Mr. Vega. I also know that some people in our industry think those guidelines are based on personal preferences rather than professional judgment." Marcus felt his carefully controlled expression slip slightly. "Dr. Williams, I assure you that my business decisions are based entirely on—" "Let me stop you right there." Her smile was sharp and knowing. "I'm not here to debate your hiring practices. I'm here to present you with the most profitable opportunity you've seen all year, and I'm curious to see whether your reputation for business acumen is stronger than your reputation for selective partnerships." She waved her hand, and the hologram shifted to show Titan Station's current operational status. The numbers were worse than Marcus had realized. Revenue was down 67%, operational efficiency had dropped to critical levels, and employee morale was approaching rock bottom. "Titan Station is dying," Dr. Williams continued. "In 6 weeks, maybe 8 at the outside, it'll be worthless. Every major corporation in the sector is waiting for the bankruptcy announcement so they can swoop in and buy the infrastructure at salvage prices." Marcus nodded slowly. He'd been planning to do exactly that himself. "But here's what they don't see." The hologram shifted again, this time showing shipping route projections and cargo flow analyses that made Marcus lean forward in spite of himself. "Titan Station isn't failing because of location or infrastructure. It's failing because of management inefficiency and cargo routing problems that are entirely fixable." For the next 20 minutes, Dr. Williams walked him through the most comprehensive operational analysis he'd ever seen. She'd identified bottlenecks in the cargo processing systems, inefficiencies in the staff scheduling algorithms, and contractual loopholes that were costing the station millions of credits annually. More importantly, she'd developed solutions for all of them. The fix is relatively simple, she concluded. New management protocols, updated automation systems, and revised shipping contracts. Total investment, 47 million credits. Projected return, 800 million credits annually once the station is operating at optimal efficiency. Marcus found himself staring at the numbers. The profit margins were staggering, almost too good to be true. What's the catch, Dr. Williams? No catch, just timing. The longer we wait, the more expensive the fix becomes. And if Titan Station actually goes under, rebuilding that level of infrastructure would cost 10 times what we're looking at now. We? Her smile widened. I want a partnership, Mr. Vega, 50-50 split. I provide the expertise and project management, you provide the capital and corporate backing. Within 1 year, we'll both be significantly wealthier, and you'll have added the most strategically important trading post in the solar system to your shipping network. Marcus sat back in his chair, his mind racing. The proposal was brilliant. The financial projections were solid, and the strategic advantages of controlling Titan Station were obvious. It was exactly the kind of opportunity he'd built his career on. It was also being presented by exactly the kind of woman his guidelines told him to avoid. Dr. Williams, your analysis is impressive, but I'll need time to review the details with my financial team before making any commitments. She nodded and stood, but there was something in her expression that suggested she'd expected this response. Of course, I'll be in New Geneva for 3 more days. After that, I'll be presenting this proposal to Consolidated Shipping. Marcus felt a cold stab of alarm. Consolidated was his biggest rival, and they had both the resources and the ruthlessness to make Dr. Williams's plan work. If they gained control of Titan Station, it would shift the balance of power in the shipping industry significantly. Dr. Williams, think about it, Mr. Vega. She gathered her holographic projector and headed for the door. I've heard you're the kind of businessman who doesn't let personal feelings interfere with professional opportunities. I hope that reputation is accurate. After she left, Marcus sat alone in his office for a long time, staring out at the city below. Dr. Zara Williams had just presented him with the opportunity of a lifetime, and they both knew it. The question was whether his carefully constructed guidelines were more important than the biggest potential profit he'd ever encountered. His hands were shaking slightly as he reached for his coffee cup, and Marcus Vega realized that for the first time in years, he genuinely didn't know what decision he was going to make. Marcus spent the next 18 hours buried in financial projections and operational reports. He'd called in favors with 3 different consulting firms, had his best analysts run independent assessments of Titan Station's situation, and even hired a private investigation firm to verify Dr. Williams' credentials. Every piece of information he gathered told him the same thing. Her proposal wasn't just good, it was extraordinary. But his guidelines had never failed him before. Derek found him in his office at 6 in the morning, still wearing yesterday's clothes and surrounded by holographic displays showing shipping routes, profit margins, and structural engineering reports. Sir, did you sleep here? Marcus looked up, realizing his eyes were burning from staring at data streams for too long. Derek, I need you to run one more analysis. I want to know exactly how much market share we'd lose if Consolidated Shipping takes control of Titan Station. Derek's expression grew concerned. Sir, we've already run that projection 3 times. The answer doesn't change. If Consolidated gets Titan, they'll control 38% of all cargo traffic in the inner solar system. We'd be fighting for scraps. Run it again. 20 minutes later, Derek returned with the same numbers Marcus had seen before. A consolidated takeover of Titan Station would effectively end Vega Industries' dominance in the shipping sector. They'd still be profitable, but they'd no longer be the unchallenged leader they'd been for 15 years. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to think clearly. His grandfather had built this company with 3 cargo haulers and an unshakable belief that hard work and smart decisions would always win in the end. His father had expanded the fleet and established the first permanent trade routes to the outer colonies. Marcus had taken that foundation and built it into an empire that spanned 17 star systems. All of it was at risk because he was afraid to work with a woman who made him feel uncertain. Derek, schedule another meeting with Dr. Williams this afternoon. Yes, sir. Should I prepare a contract draft? Marcus hesitated. No, not yet. I just want to talk to her. At exactly 2 o'clock, Dr. Williams returned to his office. This time she wore a different suit, deep blue that somehow made her eyes even more striking. She carried herself with the same confident grace, but Marcus thought he detected something else in her manner. Curiosity, maybe, or amusement. Mr. Vega, I take it you've had time to review my proposal? I have. Your numbers check out. The plan is solid. The profit projections are conservative, if anything. Marcus gestured toward the conference table. I have some questions. They sat across from each other, and Marcus found himself studying her face as she waited for him to speak. There was intelligence there, obviously, but also patience and something that might have been respect. She wasn't trying to pressure him or manipulate him. She was simply waiting to see what kind of businessman he really was. Dr. Williams, why me? You could present this proposal to any of a dozen major corporations. Some of them would be easier to work with than I am. Her smile was slight but genuine. Because you're the best at what you do, Mr. Vega. I've studied your operational methods, your expansion strategies, your personnel management techniques. When you commit to a project, it succeeds. That's not luck or coincidence. That's skill. But you've also studied my hiring practices. I have. She leaned forward slightly. And I think they're limiting your potential. Marcus felt his carefully maintained composure slip. Excuse me? You've built an impressive empire, but you've done it by avoiding challenges that make you uncomfortable. That's not sustainable in the long term. Markets change. Opportunities arise in unexpected forms. If you can only work with people who fit a predetermined profile, you're going to miss chances that could transform your entire industry. The accusation stung because there was truth in it. Marcus had always prided himself on his adaptability, his ability to recognize opportunity wherever it appeared. But Dr. Williams was suggesting that his guidelines had become a weakness rather than a strength. My guidelines have served me well for 15 years. Have they? Or have you succeeded in spite of them? She activated her holographic projector again, but this time the display showed data about Vega Industries itself. I ran some analyses of your company's growth patterns. Your most successful expansions happened when you partnered with people who challenged your assumptions. The Kepler route, the Centauri mining contracts, the automated cargo systems, all of those breakthrough projects came from working with individuals who didn't fit your typical consultant profile. Marcus stared at the data, recognizing the pattern even though he'd never seen it laid out so clearly before. His biggest successes had indeed come from unlikely partnerships with people who thought differently than he did. What's your point, Dr. Williams? My point is that you're better than your guidelines give you credit for, and I think you know it. For a long moment, they sat in silence. Marcus found himself studying her face, noting the intelligence in her eyes and the confidence in her posture. She was everything his guidelines warned him against, brilliant, beautiful, and completely unintimidated by his reputation or his wealth. She was also right about the Titan station opportunity. If we move forward with this partnership, Marcus said slowly, I'll need certain assurances, professional boundaries, clear reporting structures, defined responsibilities for each phase of the project. Of course, I wouldn't expect anything less from someone with your reputation for thoroughness. And I'll need to know that this partnership won't become complicated. Dr. Williams tilted her head slightly. Mr. Vega, I'm a professional with a doctorate degree and 15 years of corporate experience. I'm perfectly capable of maintaining appropriate workplace relationships. The question is whether you are. The challenge in her voice was unmistakable, and Marcus realized that she was pushing him deliberately, testing him, seeing whether he could separate his personal anxieties from his business judgment. Dr. Williams, I want to be clear about something. My guidelines weren't developed arbitrarily. They exist because I've learned that certain types of distractions can interfere with optimal decision-making processes. And I want to be clear about something too, Mr. Vega. I'm not here as a distraction. I'm here as a highly qualified professional with a proposal that could make us both extremely wealthy. If you can't handle working with me because of what I look like, then your guidelines aren't protecting your business interests. They're sabotaging them. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a recognition that the conversation had moved beyond business negotiations into something more fundamental. Dr. Williams wasn't just offering him a profitable partnership. She was challenging him to become a better version of himself. What happens if the project fails? He asked. It won't fail. I don't work on projects that fail. But hypothetically. Her expression grew serious. Hypothetically, we both lose a significant amount of money and time, but we also learn something valuable about taking calculated risks. The alternative is watching Consolidated Shipping take control of Titan Station while we sit here debating whether I'm too dangerous to work with. Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere in those gleaming towers, executives from Consolidated Shipping were probably planning their own takeover bid for Titan Station. Every hour he spent hesitating was an hour they gained. But more than that, he was beginning to realize that Dr. Williams had identified something important about his approach to business. His guidelines had become a crutch, a way to avoid challenges that might push him outside his comfort zone. And that wasn't the kind of leader his grandfather or his father had been. Dr. Williams, if we do this, I want to make something clear. This is a professional partnership, nothing more. Understood. And I want regular progress reports, weekly updates on every aspect of the project. Of course. And if at any point I determine that the partnership isn't working, then we dissolve it professionally and part ways with no hard feelings. Marcus turned back to face her. One more thing. I want to understand why you specifically sought out this meeting. You could have presented this proposal through intermediaries. You could have avoided the complications entirely. Why put yourself in this position? For the first time since entering his office, Dr. Williams hesitated. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than before. Because I'm tired of watching qualified women get passed over because someone decided they were too much of a distraction. I'm tired of seeing brilliant proposals rejected because they came from the wrong type of person. And I'm tired of letting other people's limitations define my opportunities. She stood and gathered her holographic projector. I believe you're a better businessman than your reputation suggests, Mr. Vega. I'm hoping you'll prove me right. After she left, Marcus sat alone in his office for another hour, weighing his options. The smart play was obvious. Partner with Dr. Williams, save Titan Station, and secure Vega Industries' position as the dominant shipping corporation in human space. Everything else was just fear disguised as professional caution. Finally, he picked up his communicator and called Derek. Derek? Draft a partnership agreement for the Titan Station project. Equal split, standard corporate protections, 12-month initial term with options for extension. Yes, sir. Should I include the usual hiring restriction clauses? Marcus paused, thinking about Dr. Williams' challenge and about the pattern of success that had emerged when he'd worked with people who pushed him beyond his comfort zone. No, Derek. Leave those out. I think it's time to try a different approach. 3 hours later, Marcus signed the partnership agreement and authorized the initial $47 million credit investment. As he sealed the contract, He realized he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine excitement about a project's potential. Dr. Zara Williams was about to become his business partner. His guidelines said it was a mistake, but for the first time in 15 years, Marcus Vega was willing to bet that his guidelines might be wrong. 6 weeks after signing the partnership agreement, Marcus stood in the command center of Titan Station, watching the most incredible transformation he'd ever witnessed in his business career. The facility that had been dying just weeks earlier was now humming with efficient activity. Cargo ships moved in and out of the docking bays with clockwork precision, automated systems processed shipments faster than ever before, and the staff worked with renewed energy and purpose. Dr. Zara Williams stood beside him at the observation deck, reviewing real-time operational data on her tablet. She'd spent the last month and a half practically living on Titan Station, implementing her restructuring plan with the kind of methodical brilliance that Marcus was beginning to recognize as her signature approach. "Processing efficiency is up 73% from when we started," she reported. "Cargo turnaround time has improved by 45 minutes on average, and customer satisfaction ratings have jumped from 32% to 89%. Marcus nodded, still somewhat amazed by what she'd accomplished. "What about the financial projections?" "We're ahead of schedule. Based on current performance metrics, Titan Station will be operating at full profitability 3 weeks earlier than projected. The investment recovery timeline has improved from 18 months to 14 months. As she spoke, Marcus found himself watching her face rather than listening to the numbers. Over the past 6 weeks, he'd learned that Dr. Williams approached every challenge with the same combination of analytical precision and creative problem-solving that had impressed him during their first meeting. She was demanding with the staff but fair, exacting in her standards but supportive when people needed help meeting those standards. She was also, he was beginning to realize, unlike anyone he'd ever worked with before. "Mr. Vega, did you hear what I said about the shipping route modifications?" Marcus blinked, realizing he'd been staring. "Sorry, the route modifications?" Dr. Williams gave him a look that was equal parts amusement and exasperation. "I said we've identified 17 route optimizations that could reduce travel time between Titan and the outer colonies by an average of 8 hours per trip. The fuel savings alone would pay for the navigation system upgrades within 6 months. That's excellent news." "It is. But you seem distracted. Is there something else on your mind?" Marcus hesitated. Over the past month and a half, his carefully maintained professional distance had been gradually eroding. Working closely with Dr. Williams had revealed layers of intelligence, humor, and determination that made her impossible to ignore. She challenged his ideas, improved his plans, and made him think about business problems in ways he'd never considered before. More problematically, she'd also made him question every assumption underlying his personal guidelines. "Dr. Williams, I wanted to discuss something with you about our partnership." Her expression grew cautious. "What about it?" "When we started this project, I had certain concerns about maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. I remember you were quite specific about that." Marcus looked out at the bustling activity of the station below them. "I think I owe you an apology. My concerns weren't about your professionalism. They were about my own ability to maintain focus when working with someone who—" He struggled to find the right words. "Someone who looks like me? Someone who challenges me the way you do." Marcus turned to face her directly. "Dr. Williams, you've made me a better businessman. This project, the way you've approached it, the results you've achieved, it's all been extraordinary. And I'm starting to realize that my guidelines weren't protecting my business interests. They were protecting my ego." Dr. Williams set down her tablet and studied his face carefully. "What exactly are you saying, Mr. Vega?" "I'm saying that you were right. My hiring practices have been limiting my potential. I've been so focused on avoiding distractions that I've been avoiding opportunities. And that's not the kind of leader I want to be. For a moment, they stood in silence, watching the organized chaos of the station operations below. Then Dr. Williams spoke, her voice quieter than usual. "Marcus, can I ask you something personal?" The use of his first name caught him off guard. In 6 weeks of working together, she'd never dropped the formal address. "Of course." "What are you afraid of?" The question was simple, but it hit him like a physical blow. Marcus found himself thinking about his grandfather's stories of building the company from nothing, about his father's expansion into the outer colonies, about his own rise to leadership of the family empire. All of it had been built on calculated risks and careful decision-making. "I'm afraid of losing control," he said finally. "My grandfather and my father, they built this company by staying focused, by not letting personal feelings interfere with business decisions. I've always believed that emotional attachments were a weakness that successful leaders couldn't afford." "And now?" Marcus looked at her, taking in the intelligence in her eyes and the quiet strength in her posture. "Now I think I confused attachment with distraction. I thought avoiding one would prevent the other." Dr. Williams moved closer to the observation window, her reflection visible in the reinforced glass. "I've been running my own consulting business for 8 years. Do you know why I work alone? Because you prefer the independence? Because I was tired of male colleagues assuming I was there for decoration rather than expertise. I got tired of fighting for respect in every meeting. Tired of having my ideas dismissed until a man repeated them. Tired of being seen as a potential romantic complication rather than a professional asset." She turned to face him. "When I heard about your guidelines, I was angry. Another successful man who decided that women like me were too much trouble to work with. But after spending 6 weeks working with you, I think I understand what really happened." "What do you mean?" "I think at some point, you met someone who made you feel things you weren't prepared to handle. Someone who made you question your priorities or your focus. And instead of dealing with those feelings, you decided it was safer to avoid the situation entirely." Marcus felt his chest tighten. Dr. Williams had identified something he'd never admitted to himself. His guidelines weren't based on professional experience. They were based on fear. "There was someone," he said quietly. 7 years ago. A brilliant engineer named Sarah Chen. We worked together on the expansion into the Kepler system. She was everything I thought I wanted. Intelligent, driven, beautiful. We started as professional colleagues and became something more." "What happened?" "I convinced myself that our relationship was interfering with my judgment, that I was making business decisions based on personal feelings rather than corporate logic. So I ended the partnership and the relationship." Marcus paused, remembering the pain in Sarah's eyes when he'd explained his decision. 6 months later, she took a position with Stellar Dynamics. Within 2 years, she'd revolutionized their entire operational structure. They're now our biggest competitor in the outer colonies. Dr. Williams was quiet for a long moment. "So you created guidelines to make sure you'd never have to make that choice again?" "Yes. And I convinced myself I was protecting my business when really I was just protecting myself from having to trust my own judgment." "Marcus." Her voice was gentle but firm. "What we've accomplished here, what we've built together, none of it happened in spite of who I am. It happened because of who I am, because of the way I think, the way I approach problems, the way I challenge assumptions. If you'd followed your guidelines, none of this would exist." Marcus looked out at Titan Station, thriving under their joint leadership. The numbers didn't lie. This was the most successful project he'd ever been involved with. And it had succeeded precisely because Dr. Williams brought something to the partnership that he couldn't have achieved alone. "Dr. Williams? Zara?" Her name felt strange on his lips. more personal than he'd allowed himself to be in years. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." "What?" "This partnership, the way we work together, is it something you'd be interested in continuing? Beyond Titan Station, I mean. A permanent arrangement." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you offering me a job, Marcus?" "I'm offering you a position as Chief Operations Officer of Vega Industries, full corporate partnership, profit sharing, and complete authority over operational improvements across our entire fleet." He paused. "I'm also asking if you'd be interested in exploring what this could become if we stop pretending it's purely professional." Dr. Williams stared at him for a long moment, and Marcus found himself holding his breath. Everything he'd built his career on told him this was a mistake. His guidelines, his professional caution, his fear of mixing business with personal feelings, all of it screamed that he was about to make the same error that had cost him Sarah Chen. But for the first time in years, Marcus was willing to trust his instincts over his rules. "Marcus," Zara said finally, "I'll accept your offer on one condition." "What condition?" "Burn your guidelines, all of them, publicly. I want every woman in this industry to know that Marcus Vega judges people on their abilities, not their appearance." Marcus thought about the reputation he'd built, the careful structure he'd created around his personal and professional life, the safe boundaries that had protected him from uncertainty and risk. Then he thought about the past 6 weeks, about working with someone who challenged him to be better than he'd ever been, about the possibility of building something extraordinary with a woman who saw potential he'd never recognized in himself. "Done," he said. 3 months later, Marcus stood before the annual convention of colonial commerce, addressing an audience of shipping executives, corporate leaders, and business journalists from across human space. Behind him, a holographic display showed the remarkable transformation of Titan Station and the record-breaking profits Vega Industries had achieved since forming their new operational partnership. "Ladies and gentlemen," he concluded, "I want to share something personal with you today. For 15 years, I operated under a set of professional guidelines that I believed were necessary for corporate success. Today, I'm officially retiring those guidelines." He gestured toward the display, which now showed images of Dr. Zara Williams directing operations across multiple Vega Industries facilities. "The most successful business partnership of my career has been with someone who challenged every assumption I held about effective leadership. Dr. Williams didn't succeed despite being different from my usual associates. She succeeded because of it." The audience murmured with interest as Marcus continued. "Vega Industries is announcing a new corporate policy today. We will evaluate all potential partnerships and employees based solely on their qualifications, their vision, and their ability to contribute to our mission. Physical appearance, personal background, and demographic characteristics will play no role in our decision-making process." After his speech, Marcus found Zara waiting for him backstage. She wore a smile that was equal parts pride and affection, and when he approached her, she reached out to straighten his tie with casual familiarity. "Good speech," she said. "Think it'll make a difference?" "I hope so, though I suspect the real change will happen gradually, one partnership at a time." "Speaking of partnerships," she moved closer, her voice dropping to a more intimate level. "Are you ready for dinner? I made reservations at that place you like overlooking the harbor." Marcus slipped his arm around her waist, marveling at how natural the gesture felt. 6 months ago, his guidelines would have prevented him from even considering a relationship with Dr. Zara Williams. Now, those same guidelines seemed like relics from a smaller, more frightened version of himself. "I'm ready," he said. "Though I have to warn you, I'm still learning how to balance professional partnerships with personal relationships." Zara laughed, the sound warm and knowing. "Marcus, you've already learned the most important lesson. Trust your judgment, trust your partner, And don't let fear disguise itself as wisdom. As they walked toward the restaurant together, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. His guidelines had promised safety and control, but they'd delivered limitation and isolation instead. Working with Zara had taught him that the greatest opportunities often came disguised as the biggest risks. And sometimes, the person who challenges you the most is exactly the person you need to become the best version of yourself.